Hey all, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Tallulah Talks. I'm sorry that I haven't been here the last week or so. I was working and then I was ill and I didn't really feel up to making a video and uploading. But I am back. But again, so today, Saturday's haunting hour. But next week there will be no videos just because I'm on holiday with my family. And so after today, the next video will be Wednesday the 12th of October. And saying that, let's just get started. Today's video is about the history and the sort of spirits around the Dybbuk box. This is like a little trinket in sort of Jewish folklore. And I actually got this idea from watching the movie The Possession. So if you don't know what The Possession is, it came out in 2012. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is in it from Supernatural. He is Daddy Winchester. Basically, his daughter finds this little box at like a car boot sale or like a garage sale, whatever they call it over there. And strange things begin happening and she starts seeing things, and eventually she is possessed by whatever spirit is contained in the box. In the end, I believe they get rid of the spirit, they re-trap it, and that's like the end of the movie. So we're going to be talking about what happened in real life with the Dybbuk box. So my book of stories as per usual. So, in Jewish folklore, so a disembodied spirit or someone who has passed on, they are then contained in this box called a Dybbuk box. The reason being, otherwise they will just wander around restlessly. However, it then kind of turned into containing malicious or demonic spirits to prevent them from hurting people. They began believing in this because I believe it was something to do with 16th to 17th century, and those with mental health issues were taken to a rabbi, which is kind of like a priest, but in the Jewish community it's a rabbi. And they believed that they could expel whatever entity was within this mentally ill person. You've got to remember this was the 1600s. People did not know what mental health really was back then. There wasn't enough sort of medicine hadn't advanced that far so as to know what mental health was, and so they just assumed it was spirits that were taking over these people's bodies. So they then named this harmful spirit a Dybbuk. Isaac Lucaria, 1534 to 1572, was a mystic, and he actually laid the grounds for the Jewish belief in the Dybbuk, with the writings of this on spirits. He saw this as a means where spirits could continue a task of finding perfection. His followers then took it one step further with the idea that Dybbuks or these spirits can possess people. So kind of like what we would have within Christianity. You get demonic spirits and then priests come in and try to exorcise those spirits if they believe they are possessing someone. So it's kind of the same thing. The Jewish scholar S. Ansky contributed to knowledge and interest within the Dybbuk box when a Yiddish drama called Der Dybbuk was translated to several different languages. And then this then created what was known as a Dybbuk box, and this was thought to contain these spirits. It was typically like a small wine cabinet, which is said to be haunted by whatever spirit was within. A malicious spirit typically. So Dybbuk spirits are known to haunt and possess the living, kind of like demonic spirits, and they achieved, the Dybbuk box achieved recognition when it was auctioned on eBay with an accompanying horror story. And this was the inspiration for the horror film that I was talking about, The Possession. So the term was first kind of used by Kevin Mannis as the description on eBay. He detailed true events which had occurred while he was in possession of the Dybbuk box, and he basically just wanted rid of it. Mannis owned an antique shop in Portland, and he bought the box at an estate sale in 2001. It previously belonged to a Holocaust survivor, Havela, who escaped Spain before then immigrating to the USA. I don't know if it was her who had sealed the Dybbuk, but someone had purposely sealed the Dybbuk box in the box. So, like, during this time when she had the box, the spirit then contacted her and her friends after they conducted a seance. When Mannis then came into possession of the box, he opened it, and it contained quite a lot of pieces which were quite common within the Jewish community. So it contained two 1920 pence pieces, a lock of blonde hair which was bound with cord, a lock of brown hair also bound with cord, a small statue with the engravement of Shalom, a dried rosebud, and a candle holder with 4 octopus legs and a wine goblet. All these items were from Jewish folklore, and it was thought that these specific items could exorcise demonic spirits. Many owners of the Dybbuk box, I'm not sure how many owned this box before, but they had reported strange occurrences that would accompany the box when they were in possession of it. Mannis claimed to experience horrific nightmares, and he then shared with others who had owned the box, and it was all very similar. They all had the same nightmares, and these nightmares were said to contain an old hag. That was with every single person who had owned the box. His mother then suffered a stroke on the same day that Mannis had presented her with this Dybbuk box, because I think he was giving it to her as like a gift. Unfortunately, she then suffered a stroke, and this was October 28th. Every owner has reported that the box stinks of like cat urine and jasmine flowers, which is that's a very odd combination. And like I said, every single owner also had these nightmares which involve seeing an old hag which would accompany a box. So logically you would think that this is the spirit that is contained within the box. A museum director then, Jason Haxton, had been following these blogs about this Dybbuk box, and I assume Kevin Mannis may have put his story online. He then bought it himself. He claimed that he developed very strange health issues. He developed highs, coughing up blood, and welts all over his body. And his wife experienced bloody blisters after she came into contact with her husband's clothing when he was attempting to contain the spirit back in the box. I guess it got out. I never really said. Within his office, he experienced burst light bulbs, and when the box was then removed from the museum, it was locked in Haxton's truck. During this time, Haxton again also had nightmares of an old hag who accompanied the box. And the final straw came when him and his son were watching TV, and his son noticed that there was like a black flame mass type of shadow, I guess, in the room with them. And at this point, I think Jason Haxton had become quite scared because obviously now his son was involved. So he then consulted rabbis to try and figure out a way to seal the Dybbuk back in the box, because I'm assuming he opened it and that kind of set the Dybbuk free. So they took the box, resealed it, and then hid it in a secret location. So kind of going back to Kevin Mannis, before giving it to his mother on her birthday, Mannis previously had kept the box in the basement of his home. When he was away from his store at one point, he got a really frantic call from one of his staff members that someone in the shop was swearing and destroying items within the shop, but it was someone he couldn't see, so obviously the person was very scared. Mannis then returned to the shop to find all the lights in the basement broken and a very strong smell of cat urine. After this and the event with his mother, who unfortunately had the stroke, he tried giving the box away to various different family members. I think the longest any of the family members actually had ownership of the box was about a week. So Mannis then got the box back every single time. He then experienced nightmares where friends would transform into this hag-like woman, and then the hag would beat him, and he actually woke up with bruises and marks all over his body. He also began seeing shadow creatures, as did visitors whenever they visited his home. And he put the box in a storage unit, but like a fire alarm would keep going off, and whenever he investigated, there was no smoke, no fire. Something had set off this alarm. He then took the box back into his house and began researching the history of the Dybbuk box. And at this point, he fell asleep and he had a nightmare. He woke up at 4:30 in the morning to the feeling of someone breathing on his neck, and then he also saw like a shadow figure in his hallway. He then put the box on eBay in June 2005. And it then sold to a university student called Lasif Niechke. I don't know if he bought it to research during his studies, I think that's what it said. But then after 8 months, the box was then back on sale. And that was when he was able to sell it to Jason Haxton, the museum director. So at this point, Zach Baggins, who was like... he's known for the show Ghost Adventures, and he had been following the story also. He then bought this item from Haxton. He had the box as part of a collection of his paranormal objects. He does not show the box to the public, so this kind of makes me think he still is in ownership of the Dybbuk box. He does not show to public, but if anyone is ever interested, he does make them sign a waiver to say that anything that happens, that's not his responsibility. And that is the story and the history of the Dybbuk box. So I just found that quite an interesting story, that everyone kind of had the same experience with this box. I don't think I'd ever like to be in possession of one. I don't know if there's just like one in the world. There must be more than one. But yeah, it must be quite terrifying to see that all in your home, and then you have to like recontain the spirit in the box, and yeah, it's just terrifying. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed today's story as much as I did researching it. Like I said, I am now not back until the 12th of October, but don't let that stop you. There's plenty of videos on my channel. I would also love to see some comments about what videos you'd like me to do next. As you know, this is Saturday's Haunting Hour, and on every Wednesday I do Killer Wednesdays, where I look into the psychology of killers and serial killers. And if this is something